The Most Important Thing Illuminated by Howard Marks. Picture yourself in the late 1960s, riding the wave of incredible American optimism. You've just scored your first Wall Street gig, rubbing shoulders with the sharpest financial minds of the era. And they've cracked the code to riches, or so they think. The formula? Dead simple. Find the 50 best, most innovative, fastest-growing companies in America. Giants like IBM, Xerox, Polaroid, Coca-Cola, and buy their stock. Price tag? Doesn't matter. Just buy. They dubbed them the Nifty 50. These weren't merely good companies. They were titans reshaping the world. The logic seemed bulletproof. If a company grows fast enough and its quality soars high enough, the price you pay becomes irrelevant. Growth would eventually justify anything. It felt like the closest thing to a sure bet in the wild uncertainty of Wall Street. So investors poured in their money. They paid 80 or 90 times a company's earnings when the historical norm hovered around 15. They felt like geniuses. They felt invincible. And for a while the magic held. Stock prices climbed higher and higher. Then the early 1970s arrived, and the music died. The economy tanked. Inflation exploded. And the Nifty 50? They crashed spectacularly. Those brilliant, supposedly bulletproof stocks, the crown jewels of American business, lost 90% of their value. Imagine watching your life savings, invested in what seemed like the safest bet imaginable, simply vanish. What happened? The companies themselves remained exceptional. But investors had forgotten the most important thing. This central puzzle is what our guide today, Howard Marks, has dedicated his career to unraveling. Marks is a legend in investment circles. As co-founder of Oaktree Capital Management, he oversees more than $100 billion. His reputation doesn't come from flashy wins, but from profound wisdom. When the smartest people get scared, they turn to Marks, because he's mastered the delicate art of navigating risk. His book, The Most Important Thing, isn't some quick money scheme. It offers something far more precious, a philosophy. A framework for thinking that shields you from the emotional and psychological traps that doomed the Nifty 50 and countless others since. Here's my promise. By the end of our time together, you'll grasp the fundamental gap between how ordinary people approach investing and how masters think. It's a perspective shift so profound that it extends beyond money into every corner of your decision-making life. It's the secret to transcending simple, surface-level thinking and embracing the deeper wisdom that separates the winners from the rest. Let's begin where most people start. What's investing's oldest rule? Simple enough that everyone knows it. Buy low, sell high. Sounds obvious, right? Who would intentionally buy high and sell low? But here's where a master thinker like Howard Marks throws you a curveball. What exactly does low mean, and what's high? Most people, what Marks calls first-level thinkers, have a straightforward answer. Low means the price dropped. High means it went up. Or they'll say, it's a great company, so I should grab the stock. This kind of thinking is simplistic and shallow. It's the path to trouble because it mirrors how everyone else thinks. And as Marx reminds us, when you think like everyone else, you get everyone else's results. Those results are rarely spectacular. To become a superior investor, you need to operate on another plane. You need what he calls second-level thinking. A first-level thinker declares, it's a good company, let's buy the stock. A second-level thinker responds, sure, it's a good company, but everyone already knows that. It's the talk of every boardroom and dinner party. Because of all that enthusiasm, the stock price has been pushed to unreasonable heights. It's overrated and overpriced. Let's sell. See the difference? The first-level thinker focuses solely on the company. The second-level thinker considers the company, the price, and crucially, what everyone else thinks about both. It's more complex, more layered, and it accounts for a vital element most people ignore: human psychology. Investing, Marx insists, isn't a science, it's an art. Markets aren't driven purely by formulas and spreadsheets. They're driven by people, and people are driven by emotion. Marx paints a vivid picture to illustrate this. Imagine the market as a giant pendulum, constantly swinging between two extremes. On one side sits euphoria. Everything's wonderful. People are optimistic, convinced the good times will roll forever, and they completely forget about risk. Greed takes over, fueled by the fear of missing out on easy money. During these swings, they'll pay any price for an asset. Think the Nifty 50 or the dot-com frenzy of the late 90s. But pendulums never stay at one extreme. The very force that pushes it to euphoria's peak creates the momentum for its swing back. And on the other side, depression, chaos everywhere. Terrible news dominates. People turn pessimistic, convinced things will only worsen, paralyzed by fear. They refuse to buy anything, regardless of how cheap it gets. They just want out, desperate to stop the bleeding. Here's the thing, Marx notes. The pendulum spends almost no time in the middle, at that happy medium where prices actually make sense. It's nearly always swinging toward one emotional extreme or the other. Average investors ride this pendulum. They get greedy when others are greedy and fearful when others are fearful. They buy near the top, swept up in euphoria, and they sell near the bottom, consumed by panic. They're part of the herd. Superior investors, the second-level thinkers, do the exact opposite. They understand the pendulum. They know that when it swings too far one way, it must swing back. So they use the crowd's emotions as signals. When everyone else is euphorically buying, they grow cautious and begin selling. And when everyone else is panicking and dumping everything, they pull out their shopping lists and start buying. Warren Buffett, a friend and admirer of Marx, captured it perfectly. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. This is the Contrarian's mantra. It's about having the courage to stand apart from the crowd. But this raises a crucial question. If you're betting against the crowd, you need an anchor. Something solid to grip when the emotional storm rages. What is that anchor? For Howard Marks, that anchor is straightforward, a deep understanding of intrinsic value. You must know, with as much certainty as possible, what an asset is actually worth. Not today's price tag, not tomorrow's hopeful projection, but its fundamental, underlying value right now. This value rests on tangible factors, its assets, its earnings, its cash-generating ability. Once you firmly grasp what something's worth, the game becomes much clearer. Your goal shifts away from guessing the market's next move. Instead, you aim to buy things for significantly less than their true worth. This gap, the difference between intrinsic value and the price you pay, is what Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, called the margin of safety. Think of building a bridge. If calculations show it needs to hold 10,000 pounds, you don't build it to hold exactly that. You build it to hold 20,000 pounds. That extra capacity is your margin of safety. It protects you if your calculations were slightly off, or if an unexpectedly heavy truck rolls across. In investing, the same principle applies. If you calculate a company's stock is worth $100 per share, you don't buy at $98. That leaves barely any room for error. Maybe you wait until you can snag it for $60. That $40 difference is your margin of safety. It's your shield against an uncertain future. Even if things don't unfold perfectly, earnings dip, the economy slows, you still have a solid chance of avoiding losses. And if you're right about the value, that's when you score great returns. This brings us to one of the book's most powerful and counterintuitive ideas, the paradox of risk. Most people, including many academics, get risk completely wrong. They define it as volatility, how much a stock's price bounces around. Marx calls this nonsense. Volatility isn't risk. A price jumping up and down doesn't mean you'll lose your money. The only risk that truly matters, he argues, is the risk of permanent capital loss. The risk that you invest your money and never get it back. So where does this risk originate? From buying bad companies? Not necessarily. A low-quality company can be a fantastic investment if you buy it cheap enough. From a bad economy? Not always. You can lose fortunes even in boom times. No, Marx argues. The greatest investment risk stems from one thing: paying too high a price. It's that simple. And what drives people to pay too much? The belief that there is no risk. This is the paradox. Risk peaks when the widespread perception of risk hits bottom. Let that sink in. When everyone believes an investment is a sure thing, when they feel safe and secure, that's the single most dangerous moment to invest. Why? Because when nobody's worried, they grow complacent. They stop demanding a margin of safety. Greed takes over and they'll pay any price. And a high price, by its nature, means lower potential returns and higher loss risk. It's like someone driving a massive SUV. Surrounded by all that steel, they feel so safe they might start driving recklessly, texting, speeding, paying less attention. The feeling of safety actually breeds danger. Conversely, risk drops when perception of risk soars, when there's blood in the streets, when news is catastrophic, when everyone's panicking and convinced the world's ending. That's the safest time to invest. Why? Because fear has hammered prices down to absurdly low levels. At that point, all the bad news is already baked into the price. The margin of safety is enormous. This is what Marx calls the, quote, perversity of risk. It's completely backward from how most people think. They feel safest when taking the most risk and most terrified when opportunities are greatest. Understanding this changes everything. Your job as an investor isn't hunting for the next hot stock. Your job is being a psychologist. It's taking the market's temperature. You need to look around and ask, are other investors optimistic or pessimistic, greedy or fearful, eagerly buying everything in sight or running for the exits? These answers reveal far more about risk levels than any complex financial model. When capital flows freely, deals happen everywhere, and everyone's bragging about their returns, that's when you should be most cautious. And when capital dries up, nobody can get loans, and your friends are pulling all their money out, that's when you should be aggressive. This doesn't mean you can predict the future. Marx is crystal clear about this. He belongs to what he calls the I don't know school of investing. He believes attempting to forecast the economy or market direction is a fool's errand. As economist John Kenneth Galbraith quipped, there are two classes of forecasters, those who don't know, and those who don't know they don't know. So if you can't predict the future, what can you do? You can prepare. You may never know where you're going, he says, but you'd better know where you are. Understanding where you stand in the cycle, whether the pendulum's closer to euphoria or depression, is key. It doesn't reveal tomorrow's events, but it tells you the odds. It guides whether you should play offense or defense. And for Marx, the choice is almost always defense. He uses another brilliant analogy from tennis, originally from analyst Charlie Ellis. Professional tennis is a quote, winner's game. Top players like Federer or Nadal win by hitting incredible shots their opponents can't return. They win by scoring points. But amateur tennis, the kind most of us play, is a loser's game. The winner is usually whoever makes the fewest mistakes. You don't need brilliant shots. Just consistently get the ball over the net and keep it in play, waiting for your opponent to mess up. You win by not losing. Investing, for most of us, is a loser's game. Long-term success isn't about hitting home runs. It's about avoiding strikeouts. It's about preventing those catastrophic losses that erase years of hard work. If we avoid the losers, Marx says, the winners will take care of themselves. This defensive mindset ties everything together. It's why you insist on a margin of safety, why you're skeptical when everyone else is euphoric, why you refuse to chase high returns in a low-return environment, why you have the humility to admit you don't know the future, and therefore prepare for multiple possibilities instead of betting everything on one outcome. But being a defensive, contrarian investor isn't easy. It demands tremendous patience and courage. Warren Buffett uses the metaphor of baseball's greatest hitter, Ted Williams. Williams knew his odds of getting a hit skyrocketed when he only swung at pitches in his sweet spot. An investor has an even bigger advantage than a ball player. In investing, there are no called strikes. You can stand at the plate all day, letting thousands of pitches sail by. You can wait, and wait for that one perfect pitch in your sweet spot. That moment when you find a great asset selling for far less than it's worth, while everyone else looks away. This is what Marx calls patient opportunism. It's understanding that markets aren't accommodating machines. They won't deliver high returns just because you need them. So you must be willing to wait. Sometimes the most profitable action is doing nothing at all. This can be incredibly tough. You'll endure long stretches where you look wrong. When a bubble inflates and your neighbors get rich buying .com stocks, you, the disciplined value investor, will sit on the sidelines. You'll feel foolish. The temptation to give in, to capitulate, to join the party will gnaw at you. This, Marx says, is the ultimate test. He shares one of his favorite sayings: being too far ahead of your time is indistinguishable from being wrong. Holding a deeply unpopular position requires fortitude. But if your value analysis is sound, and your margin of safety is substantial, you have the anchor needed to hold on until the pendulum eventually swings in your favor. Because it always does. In the end, all these most important things are really just different angles on one overarching idea. Successful investing isn't about mastering finance. It's about mastering yourself. It's recognizing that the biggest risks don't lurk in balance sheets, but in your own psychology and the crowd's. It requires deep humility. Awareness of what you don't know becomes one of your greatest assets. It prevents arrogant bets on an unknowable future. It forces you to prepare, diversify, and insist on a margin of safety. As legendary investor Sir John Templeton once said, "To buy when others are despondently selling and to sell when others are euphorically buying takes the greatest courage, but provides the greatest profit." That's the journey of the second-level thinker. It's a lonely path, often uncomfortable. But as Howard Marks has demonstrated throughout his career, it's the only dependable route to lasting success. Stepping back from everything we've explored, what's the big takeaway? To me, Howard Marks's genius isn't inventing some secret stock-picking formula. It's providing a timeless framework for thinking about uncertainty, and that's a skill extending far beyond finance. We live in an era celebrating certainty and boldness. TV pundits shout predictions with absolute confidence. Social media overflows with people claiming they have all the answers. In this environment, the three most powerful words you can learn are, "I don't know." There's incredible strength in that admission. It's not weakness. It's the beginning of wisdom. When you accept you can't predict the future, you stop trying. Instead, you start preparing. You build margins of safety into your decisions. You consider worst-case scenarios, not out of paranoia, but to ensure you can survive them. You become a defensive player in a world obsessed with offense. This applies to everything: career choices, relationships, health. The world will always be chaotic and unpredictable. Things will go wrong. Luck, both good and bad, will play huge roles in your life. The question is, have you built your life to withstand bad luck and capitalize on good? Do you have a margin of safety? The lesson of the 6-foot-tall man who drowned crossing a stream that was, on average, 5 feet deep is a lesson for life. Averages deceive. Extremes ruin you. Marx teaches us to respect those extremes and prepare for them. So how can someone just starting out cultivate this mindset? Here are a few simple things you can begin doing today. First, become a student of history and psychology. You'll quickly see that while technology and economies change, human nature doesn't. The same greed and fear patterns causing Dutch tulip mania in the 1600s appeared in the dot-com bubble of the 1990s and the 2008 financial crisis. Understanding these patterns gives you a superpower, recognizing them when they inevitably resurface. Second, practice second-level thinking in daily life. The next time a new phone, movie, or trend explodes in popularity, pause and ask deeper questions. Okay, everyone loves this. Why? What are they seeing? More importantly, what might they be missing? Is reality as good as the hype? This simple exercise trains your brain to look beyond the surface and think like a contrarian. Third, and perhaps most importantly, cultivate patience. We live in a world of instant gratification. We want results now. But as Marx shows, the greatest opportunities often come to those willing to wait. The ability to sit quietly and do nothing when there's nothing worth doing is one of the most underrated skills in any field. Ultimately, the most important thing is about wisdom. The wisdom to know what you don't know, the courage to stand apart from the crowd, and the patience to wait for the right opportunity. It teaches that success isn't about being right all the time. It's about being right when it matters most and surviving when you're wrong. That's a lesson building not just great investment portfolios, but great lives. That was our journey through the most important thing illuminated by Howard Marks. We've touched on core pillars of his philosophy today, but I'll be honest. A summary is like looking at a postcard of the Grand Canyon. It gives you a sense of scale, but can never replace standing on the edge and seeing it yourself. The real magic happens when you read the book, in those quiet moments when a particular story or simple phrase hits you unexpectedly. This summary helps you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed today resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely transform how you see the world and make decisions within it. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It shows me these deep dives are helpful and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.